The sky above the alien city was dark green, filled with clouds that glowed from the light of 2 moons. Tyrion stepped off the shuttle, wearing a long black coat that swayed in the wind. He was a human from Earth, sent to this distant world to open peace talks, but there was something else that brought him here, something personal. He had heard stories of an alien girl locked away, feared by everyone. They called her the Void Witch, a name given by the frightened media. She had powers no one understood, and no one dared approach her until now. The guards at the facility stared at him, confused and tense. "You sure you want to go in alone?" one asked, gripping his weapon tighter. Tyrion nodded, his face calm but serious. "Yes, no weapons, no fear," he replied, walking through the heavy steel doors. The hallway was long and cold, filled with blinking red lights. Surveillance cameras followed every step he took. Unseen by him, a secret switch had been flipped. His visit was now being broadcast across the planet. Millions of eyes turned to their screens, curious, confused, and some horrified. Why would a human visit Hertha? One everyone avoided. At the end of the hall was a large containment room. Its walls were made of energy fields instead of metal. Inside sat the girl. No chains, but no freedom either. She was sitting on the ground, her white dress torn and dirty, her silver hair hung like a curtain over her face, hiding her expression. Tyrion paused, his heart beating a little faster. He had studied the reports, seen the warnings, but none of that matched what he saw now. She looked small, thin, tired, not dangerous. He took a deep breath and stepped into the room. The energy field dropped for exactly 10 seconds. Just long enough, the guards held their breath, their fingers near the alarm triggers. Tyrion didn't speak right away. He didn't move fast, didn't show fear. Instead, he walked slowly forward. Then, before anyone could understand what he was doing, he knelt. The girl twitched, barely lifting her head. A faint shimmer passed through the air, like heat waves. Guards flinched, screens flickered across the world. Viewers leaned closer to their devices, waiting for her to explode with rage or power. But she didn't. She lifted her face slowly, revealing pale skin and glowing violet eyes. Those eyes had once made generals tremble, but now they were tired, almost confused. "Why do you kneel?" she asked, her voice dry like wind over sand. Tyrion smiled gently. "Because no one else ever saw you as a person," he said. "And because respect costs nothing." The silence was heavy. The air seemed frozen, as if the whole planet was holding its breath. She stared at him, studying his face. No one had come this close in years. No one had spoken to her like this, without fear, without hate. The energy in the room changed. Monitors that once showed danger levels now glowed green. The security staff looked at each other, unsure what was happening. "Are you afraid of me?" she asked again, more curious this time. "No," Tyrion said softly. "I think you've been alone for too long." Her fingers twitched in her lap. She hadn't spoken more than 2 words in the last 3 years. Now she wanted to say more but didn't know how. "Do you want to leave this place?" he asked. Her eyes widened, as if he had just asked if she could fly. "No one ever asked me that," she whispered. Outside, across the world, people were glued to their screens. Children stopped playing. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Even the president of the planet paused a meeting to watch. Something was happening, something different, something important. A small tear slid down the girl's cheek. She reached out, slowly, hesitantly, not to attack, not to crush his mind, but to touch his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it made history. The camera zoomed in as their fingers met. It was not power, it was connection. Not control, but kindness. And just like that, the Void Witch stopped being a monster in the eyes of many. She became a girl again, one who had been feared. isolated and forgotten, until a human knelt before her. Without knowing that the entire world was watching, but deep inside the control tower. Someone was not happy. A cold voice echoed in a private room. "End the feed," it said, but it was too late. The world had seen her tears. The world had seen his kindness. And a seed of change had been planted. The door to the containment room hissed open again the next day. This time, the guards did not stop Tyrion. They just stared at him in silence. Unsure if he was brave or foolish, maybe both, he walked the same. Cold hallway past the same blinking red lights, but something had changed. The world had seen her tears. People had started talking on streets. In homes, even in high offices, some said it was a trick. Others said it was a sign of hope, but no one could deny what they saw. Vecra was not a monster. She was a girl. Tyrion stepped through the energy field once more. She was waiting this time. Sitting upright, her back straight, her silver hair had been combed, and her dress was no longer torn. Someone had brought her clean clothes. Perhaps one of the silent watchers had felt guilt. She looked at him with wide violet eyes, not with fear, but curiosity. "You came back," she said. Her voice steadier. "I said I would," Tyrion replied, smiling softly. She tilted her head, watching him closely. "You are strange for a human," she said. Tyrion laughed gently. "That's what most people say." He sat down across from her, crossing his legs like he was in a garden. There were no guards inside the room. But they were watching from behind the walls, and millions more were watching from their screens, again. The broadcast had not been shut down. Too many people wanted to see what would happen next. "Do you remember your home?" Tyrion asked. She looked down at her hands, silent for a moment. It was warm. She said finally, "There was a red lake and green skies. My mother had 6 arms. She used to braid my hair with all of them." Tyrion nodded. "That sounds beautiful." "It was," she whispered. Then her face hardened slightly. "They took me from it. ... Said I was dangerous. Said I might destroy cities if I lost control." Tyrion's voice was calm. "Did you ever hurt anyone?" She looked up sharply. "No," she said quickly. Then paused. "Once. I broke a wall when I screamed. They said it was enough. Locked me up, called me Void Witch." Her fingers curled into fists. "I was 7. The room went silent. The viewers felt a chill. Some cried, some looked away, and some finally saw. Her story, not just her power. Tyrion didn't move closer. He just spoke softly. "You were scared. Not evil." She blinked, surprised again. That's the first time anyone said that. A small light above them turned green. It meant her stress levels were dropping. The girl who once made sensors scream with alarm was now calm, and all it took. Was someone listening? Tyrion reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a wooden carving of a bird. "My sister used to make these when we were kids," he said. "She gave me this for luck, before I left Earth." He placed it on the floor between them. Vecra leaned forward, staring at it like it was magic. "Bird?" she whispered. "Freedom?" "Yes," Tyrion said. "You can't fly yet. But maybe one day." Her hand moved slowly. Trembling a little, she picked up the bird, held it gently as if it might break. Her eyes softened again, a quiet light blooming in them. "I dream of flying," she admitted. "In my dreams, I am above the clouds. No chains, no walls." "Maybe it's not just a dream," Tyrion said. "Maybe it's a future." Outside the room, the guards were silent. One of them turned off his weapon. Another one, an older man, wiped a tear from his eye. But deep in the high tower, the council watched with cold faces. "She is becoming human," one of them growled. "This cannot continue." Another nodded slowly. "If the people love her, we lose control." The council leader leaned forward. "Send a message to the human," he ordered. Something subtle, a warning, back inside the containment room. Vecra looked at Tyrion with something close to hope. Will you come again? She asked. He smiled. Every day, until they make me stop. She held the wooden bird close to her chest. Then I will wait, as Tyrion walked out. He didn't notice the small drone that followed him, a shadow in the air, sent by the council watching. Recording, targeting. That night, a crowd gathered outside the containment facility. They held signs, not weapons. Set her free. One said, another read. She has a name, and far away, in a quiet room. A technician uploaded a secret video. It showed Vecra crying, holding the wooden bird, whispering, I don't want to be feared. I just want to be seen. The video went viral in our hearts. Across the planet began to shift. She was no longer just a girl in a cage. She was becoming a symbol. But symbols attract enemies, and someone, somewhere, had just placed a target on Tyrion's back. The next morning, the sky over the alien city was cloudy and heavy with rain. Tyrion stood outside the facility, holding a simple umbrella. He looked calm. But he had noticed something strange. A small black drone had followed him all the way from his temporary living quarters. It didn't attack, didn't speak, just hovered silently. Watching him like a shadow, he knew what it meant. A warning, but he didn't stop. He walked through the gates, past the same guards. This time, the guards didn't even speak. They simply nodded, their eyes showing a mix of respect and worry inside the containment room. Vecra was standing. For the first time, she wasn't sitting on the floor. She stood tall, her back straight. The wooden bird still held gently in her hands. Her silver hair had been tied back in a loose braid. Her dress was still plain, but clean. And she looked stronger somehow. You came again, she said softly. I always will. Tyrion replied with a smile. She took a step forward, her hands trembling slightly. I had a dream last night, she said. I was flying. You were there. He nodded, stepping closer but not too close. And were you free in the dream? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, ... I was not in this room. I was above the clouds. Tyrion sat down on the floor again, inviting her to join him. She did, carefully, her movements graceful but unsure. Outside the room, more people than ever were watching. The live feed had broken records with millions of viewers from across the galaxy. Some called it the peace broadcast. Others whispered that this was the start of a revolution. Do you know what I believe, Vecra? Tyrion said, using her name clearly. She blinked, surprised to hear it. No one says my name anymore, she whispered. They call me Void Witch, Curse of Silence, or Weapon. Your name is Vecra, Tyrion said again. Names are important, she looked down, her voice almost cracking. I forgot how it felt to be called like that. Just then, something strange happened. The lights in the room flickered, but not from danger. Instead, the entire space warmed slightly. Sensors that had always shown spikes of power now showed balance. Her psychic energy was no longer violent. It was steady, flowing calmly like water. You're doing it, Tyrion whispered. You're in control. Her eyes widened. I didn't even try, she said. It just ... happened. He nodded. Because you're calm. Because you're not alone. A notification pinged in the secret room above the facility. Technicians and council agents stared at the screens. One of them gasped. Her energy readings are stable. For the first time in 12 years. Another? One frowned. This human is the trigger. She's bonding with him. The council leader stood, voice cold and sharp. This must end before it spreads. Back in the containment room, Vecra touched her forehead. It's quiet in my mind, she said. No screaming, no shadows. Only light, that's peace, Tyrion said gently. That's what they kept from you. Suddenly, Vecra tilted her head, Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You are hiding something," she said. "You're afraid, ... not of me, ... of something else," Tyron sighed. Then nodded. "There was a drone outside my quarters," he admitted, a warning. "They want me to stop coming here." She clenched her fists. "They fear me, ... And now they fear you. They fear change," he said. "But change is already here." She looked at the wooden bird again, still held in her lap. "What if they take you away?" She asked, "What if I lose the only person who sees me?" "You won't," Tyron said, his voice steady, "even if they remove me. I've already told your story, and people are listening now, outside the facility." Crowds had started forming again, but this time they weren't silent, they were singing. Soft alien melodies mixed with human voices, a song of hope, of freedom. Of names remembered, inside, Vecra reached out again. This time not just to hold his hand, but to share something deeper. She closed her eyes, and a soft glow formed around her fingers. Tyron didn't flinch. Suddenly, he saw flashes in his mind, memories not his, but hers. A red lake under twin suns, a child running through fields of floating grass, a family smiling, their faces now gone, then chains, darkness, and silence. 12 years of pain compressed into a moment. He opened his eyes, tears falling freely. "I'm sorry," he said. "No one should go through that." She looked at him, her own eyes wet. "But now you know," she said. "And now? I am not alone." Outside, the people watching felt something stir inside them. Something ancient empathy. The council watched too, and they knew they were losing control. A new order was forming not through war, but through understanding, and they hated it. The leader pressed a button on his screen. "Prepared the strike team," he said coldly. "If the human won't stop, we'll force him to." But they didn't know. They didn't understand the bond that had formed. They didn't see the power rising, not just in Vecra's mind, but in her heart. And they didn't see what she had just sensed, because as Tyron stood to leave, she whispered, "They're coming for you." Tyron left the containment room with a heavy heart. Vecra's final words echoed in his mind. "They're coming for you." He walked past the guards, who didn't meet his eyes. Something had changed. The air felt colder, the hallway quieter, even. The blinking lights seemed slower, like the building itself was holding its breath. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet. Crowds stood across from the gates, holding signs. Some held candles, others held pictures of Vecra's face drawn by children. They didn't shout, didn't push, they simply waited, silent and watching. Tyron stepped into a hover vehicle that had been waiting for him. The driver didn't speak, and Tyron didn't ask questions. He stared out the window, but he noticed a black drone flying behind them again. This time, it wasn't hiding at the facility. Vecra sat in her usual place, but her fingers were twitching, her breathing uneven. She had felt something sharp, like a blade behind her eyes. She didn't fully understand it, but she knew someone wanted to hurt Tyron. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, not far, not deep, just enough to feel his presence. There it was, a warm flicker in the storm, still safe, but not for long, in the upper tower. The council gathered in their private chamber. The leader, an older male with silver skin and deep lines across his face, tapped a screen. "Strike team is in position," he said coldly. "Wait for my signal." One of the younger members hesitated. "What if this causes a riot?" "The people are watching." The leader's eyes narrowed. "They'll forget in a week." Fear always wins, but fear was already losing, because Vecra had never reached out to anyone like this before. And now that she had, she wouldn't let him be. Taken, Tyron reached his apartment and stepped out of the vehicle. He scanned the street out of habit. and that's when he saw them 3 figures in black armor moving toward him. Their steps were too quiet, too fast, their eyes hidden behind visors. He turned quickly and ran down a side alley. The city was asleep, but the watchers were not. Across the world, thousands of people had set up alerts for the peace broadcast. And now their screens showed something different. Live footage from the drone above Tehran began to spread. The chase had begun. He ran through puddles and narrow streets, his breath heavy, his heart pounding. They were gaining, weapons drawn. Then suddenly the world around him slowed. His ears buzzed, his eyes blurred. A voice echoed inside his mind. Left turn. Now, he obeyed without question, turning just as a shot fired behind him. The energy beam missed by inches, melting part of the wall. Vekra's voice was inside him. Her connection had grown, her mind reaching farther than ever before. "I'm here," she whispered. "I won't let them hurt you." Tyrion ducked into an old building, hiding behind a stack of crates. He pressed a hand to his chest. "Breathing fast, you're in my head," he whispered. "I didn't know you could do that." "Neither did I," she replied, her voice shaking. "But I felt your fear." I followed it. The strike team paused, scanning the building. One of them spoke into a communicator. Targets hiding. Advancing slowly, but they didn't know that someone else was advancing too. Back at the facility, alarms blared in the control room. Vekra was no longer sitting quietly. She stood in the center of her room, her eyes glowing with soft violet light. Her energy levels surged, but not with rage, with focus. Technicians shouted. "She's connecting to the external systems. She's tapping the city's surveillance grid." She was guiding him through cameras, drones, and sound sensors. Her mind became a map. And Tyren was the point she protected. "You have 5 seconds, she said inside his mind. "Run to the metal door." "It's unlocked." He ran again, sweat on his face, boots slipping on the floor. He slammed through the door just as the strike team entered the building. Behind the door was a stairwell leading to a public plaza. The people there were already watching the broadcast when Tyrion burst out. They rushed toward him not to attack, but to protect. A young alien boy pulled him behind a food stand. A vendor threw a cloak over his shoulders. Someone else shouted, "They're trying to hurt the peacekeeper." The strike team stopped at the edge of the plaza. Too many eyes, too many cameras. They couldn't risk a public scene inside the tower. The council leader's face darkened. "This is getting out of control," he said. "Shut down the girl permanently." But, as the order was given, the facility's lights went out. Power failure. Caused from inside, Vekra stood in the darkness, her hands glowing. "Hush." She looked up at the cameras and spoke clearly. "Touch him again. And I will not stay calm." Her voice reached every screen across the planet. Soft but powerful. A warning, not a threat. "I did not ask to be feared," she said, "but I will not let kindness be punished." For the first time in her life, her power did not make others scream, it made them stand. It made them raise their voices and say, "No more." And as Tyren was safely led away by strangers turned friends, he whispered through their connection. "You saved me," she replied. "We saved each other." Morning arrived, but the planet was already awake. From the largest cities to the smallest farming colonies, screens lit up with one name, Vekra. Not as a warning, not as a curse, but as a symbol of hope. Clips of her speech had been shared across every network. "Touch him again, and I will not stay calm." Those words, soft and full of pain, had struck something deep in the hearts of many. For years, people were told to fear her. Now, they were beginning to question everything. Tyren sat inside a safe house built into the side of a canyon. He had not slept. His eyes were tired, but his heart was calm. He kept one hand on the small wooden bird Vekra had returned to him through a guard. It smelled of her, faintly, like cold stars and warm wind. Messages flooded the net. She's not a monster. Let her speak again. We stand with her. The Council of 12 met in silence, their faces pale. They had controlled fear for decades, but now, a single girl and a single human had shaken the balance. We must destroy the connection between them, the leader growled. If she bonds too deeply, we lose control of her completely. One member hesitated. What if the bond is what's helping her? The leader slammed his hand on the table. She is a weapon, not a person, he shouted. And weapons do not get to choose who holds them. Meanwhile, Vecra sat in the middle of her chamber. She was no longer dressed in torn rags someone had brought. Her a long, dark robe, woven with symbols of peace. She had not asked for it, someone had simply given it to her. She held the wooden bird in her lap, her fingers moving slowly over the grain across her mind. She felt the buzz of thousands of thoughts. Her connection to Tyron had changed something inside her. Now, her abilities were expanding, not in violence, but in awareness. She could feel the public energy like a pulse. Some of it was still full of fear, but much of it was filled with warmth. And one thought kept echoing louder than the rest. Let her speak. The guards outside her chamber didn't know what to do. Their orders were to keep her contained, but their screens were filled with support messages. Even from their families. One guard, an older female, whispered, "I have a daughter. If she had powers, would I lock her away too?" Tyron finally stood and walked toward the communication terminal. He knew it was risky. The council had tried to kill him once already, but now was not the time for fear. He activated the global broadcast system. His face appeared on screens around the planet. People stopped what they were doing, turning their full attention to him. "My name is Tyron of Earth," he said clearly, "and I came to this planet to build peace. I found something better. I found truth." He paused, then added, "Vecra is not your enemy. You made her a prisoner because you were afraid, but fear creates the very thing you try to avoid." Across the world, crowds started forming. Children sat close to their parents, watching carefully. Elders nodded quietly. And in one city square, someone started chanting. "She has a name," Tyron continued. "When I first knelt before her, I didn't know who she was, but I saw her tears, and now the world has seen them too." Back in the control room, council agents panicked. "Shut him down," one of them ordered, but the broadcast system was locked. Vecra had linked her power to the network itself. She was holding the signal open, using her mind. This was not just a message. This was a movement. Tyron looked straight into the camera. "You have a choice now," he said. "Continue to treat her like a weapon, and the world will break. Or see her as she truly is, a girl, a mind, a soul, and if you fear what she might become, then guide her with love, not chains." When the signal finally ended, the silence was powerful. Then a wave of sound swept across the world. Applause, cheers, tears. In the streets, thousands began marching toward government centers. They carried no weapons, only signs. "Set her free. Peace with power. Humanity begins with her." In the council tower, chaos erupted. "They're coming," one agent shouted. "Every city is in motion." The council leader stood, trembling with anger. "Then we must move now," he said. "Activate Project Null. Cut the bond, erase her memories." "But that might kill her," another warned. The leader's voice turned cold. "Then she dies. And the human dies with her." In her chamber, Vecra stood suddenly, her eyes glowing with a warning light. She felt something sharp pressing against her mind. A pulse, a weapon built for silence. Tyron felt it too, a sudden pressure in his skull, a deep pain in his spine. He fell to his knees, gasping, "Vecra, they're trying to." "I know." Her voice came into his mind, stronger than ever before. "Hold on to me." She raised her arms. An energy burst around her like a shield. She had never used her power like this, calm, focused, protective. But this time, she wasn't alone. Inside the tower, control panels sparked and failed, one by one. Project Null systems collapsed under her resistance. Then a wave of silence fell across the planet. Screens went black, but in their place, one image remained. Vecra standing in her chamber, arms raised, protecting her bond. She spoke again, her voice carried without technology. I am not your enemy, and I will not break. All across the stars, the people heard her voice not through wires or screens, but in their minds, a voice that had once been feared, now filled with truth. And for the first time, the people believed her. The council could no longer hide behind closed doors. The people had spoken, and the planet was changing. Protests filled the skies and streets. Young and old, rich and poor, alien and human, they all demanded the same thing: a trial, not a secret. Trial in a dark room, but a public one, for the world to see. The question was simple: should Vecra be free? But the answer would decide the future of the entire planet. The trial was held in the Great Dome, a place once used only for royal debates. Now, it had been reopened for the most important moment in the planet's history. Cameras floated above the dome, broadcasting the trial to every corner of the galaxy. No one could turn away now. Tyron walked into the dome wearing a plain gray suit. His face was tired, but he stood tall. Beside him, Vecra entered slowly. Wearing the same dark robe she had received days before, she looked calm. But her fingers shook slightly at her sides. The wooden bird was hidden in her sleeve. Pressed to her heart, the crowd inside the dome fell silent. Even the council members at the high table did not speak. They had agreed to follow the law, but they would use every trick to keep control. A voice echoed through the chamber. Let the trial begin. The lead speaker stood, reading the charges. In a cold voice, Vecra, also known as the Void Witch, is accused of being a threat to planetary safety. You are also accused of creating a psychic link with an outsider without permission. Vecra lifted her head. I was never asked for permission to be locked away, she replied. The crowd murmured in agreement. The council leader narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Tyron stepped forward. I asked the court to hear the full truth, he said, and not just the fear that was forced upon us. They were given time to speak. Tyron told the story from the beginning, how he knelt before her, how she cried, how she smiled. He showed the data of her changing energy levels. He played recordings of her voice, calm and full of thought. Then Vecra stepped forward and shared her memories. She did not raise her voice or flash her powers. She spoke about her mother, her planet, and the day they took her away. She described the silence, the walls, the cold, and the fear she lived with every day. I never asked to be powerful, she said. I only asked to be seen. For a moment, there was silence. Then one of the council members asked, and what if your power grows too much? What if you lose control again? Vecra looked at Tyron, then turned to face the council. Then guide me, she said softly. Don't cage me, teach me. Gasps filled the dome. A few of the older council members looked down, shamed. Then something unexpected happened. A figure stood in the audience, an old alien woman in simple clothes. I cared for her once, she said. I was her nurse when she was just a child. Security moved to stop her, but the people shouted, let her speak. The woman stepped forward with shaking hands. I was told to be afraid of her, she said. But I saw a lonely girl who cried when no one watched. I should have said something then. But I was a coward. She turned to Vecra. I'm sorry, child. Vecra's lips trembled, and for a second, she could not speak. Then she nodded slowly. I forgive you. The moment cracked something in the room. Even the council leader looked uncertain. But he still had one final move. He stood up and said in a loud voice, if we set her free and she loses control, thousands could die. Will the human take responsibility for that? Tyrion stepped forward without hesitation. "I already have," he said. "And I will stand with her, every day, every step, until she no longer needs me." The crowd rose to their feet. They did not scream or shout. They simply clapped slow, steady, strong, one by one. The council members were asked to vote. Most had already decided. 5 said yes, 2 said no, and 4 remained silent. The final vote came down to the oldest member, a thin alien male who had not spoken once during the trial. He looked around the room, at the people, the guards, the girl, and the human beside her. Then he said softly, "The future belongs to those we once feared. My vote is yes." The room exploded in sound cheers, tears, joy. Vecra stood still, her eyes wide. She had never felt so many emotions at once, but the strongest feeling was warmth. She turned to Tyrion and whispered, "We did it." But high above the dome, in a hidden control room, one figure refused to accept the result. The former council leader, now stripped of power, leaned close to a red button. "If I can't control her, then no one will," he hissed. He pressed the button marked fail-safe. A blast shook the chamber. A secret drone, hidden in the ceiling, dropped down and fired toward Vecra. People screamed. Guards raised shields too late. But before the blast could reach her, Tyrion moved. He leaped forward, placing himself in front of the energy bolt. Vecra screamed, her hands rising. A massive shield of psychic force burst from her body, stopping the blast just inches from Tyrion. The energy pulsed outward, cracking the floor, shattering the drone, but she did not harm anyone. She controlled every bit of it. When the dust settled, Tyrion stood safe, her shield glowing around him. The people stared in awe. She had saved him not with rage, but with mercy. Vecra looked around the room, then lowered her hands. "I don't want to be feared anymore," she said. "I want to be trusted," and now she was. The great dome was silent. Smoke rose from the broken drone, and cracked tiles lay across the floor. People held their breath, watching, unsure what would happen next. Vecra stood in the center of it all. Her hands were glowing softly, her hair flowing like silver fire. But her face was calm. Her eyes were not full of rage. They were full of sadness and strength. She turned and looked at Tyrion. He was safe, standing behind her, breathing hard but unharmed. The shield she had created had protected him completely. Her power, once feared, had saved a life, not ended one. Across the galaxy, every screen showed that moment. Vecra standing tall, calm, merciful. She had been attacked, and still, she had chosen not to kill. The people saw, and their fear turned to respect. Guards rushed forward and took the former council leader into custody. He shouted, twisted, and cursed, "She's dangerous. You're all blind." But no one listened to him anymore. Inside the dome, the speaker raised her voice. "The attack has failed, and justice has spoken. The trial is over." She turned to Vecra. "You are no longer a prisoner." The people cheered, their voices rising like thunder. But Vecra didn't move. She stood still for a long moment, as if unsure what freedom even meant. Tyrion walked up beside her and gently reached for her hand. She looked down, then slowly placed her fingers into his. He smiled at her, ready to walk out together. She nodded, her lips trembling slightly. "Yes," she whispered, "but I don't want to rule, or fight, or rise above. I just want to live." They walked out of the dome side by side. The doors opened, and a crowd of thousands waited outside. No one pushed, no one shouted. They simply moved aside, forming a path for her. Some dropped flowers, others knelt with respect. Children waved, holding up drawings of her with wings or stars behind her head. She paused at the top of the steps and looked up at the sky. It was clear, wide, and endless. The same sky she had only seen through glass walls and force fields. Now it was hers. Over the next few days, everything began to change. The containment center was shut down. The council was replaced by a new team, chosen by vote, not power. Vecra stayed in the capital for a while. She spoke to schools, visited hospitals, and talked with scientists. She didn't wear royal clothes or carry guards. She wore her same dark robe and carried the small wooden bird when asked what she wanted to do next. She smiled and answered, "I want to fly." A special ship was built for her. It was small, fast, and quiet. It was called the Dawn on the day of its first flight. People from all over the world came to watch. Tyron stood beside her as the sun began to rise. He looked at her and said, "You don't have to go if you're not ready." She shook her head, her eyes glowing softly. "I'm not running away," she said. "I'm going to learn, to see, and to help others like me." He nodded, understanding. "But promise you'll come back," she smiled. "I'm not leaving you, Tyron. I'm just making the sky bigger for both of us." She stepped into the ship and placed her hand on the controls. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship rose gently into the air, its lights flickering like morning stars. The crowd watched in silence, their eyes wide. Then the ship flew upward, faster and faster, until it disappeared into the clouds. She was free. Months passed, and stories of Vecra began to spread across other planets. She had visited orphan colonies, shared food with poor miners, and stopped a war with only words. She became a symbol, not of fear, but of second chances. They called her the Star Emissary, but she always corrected them. "I'm just Vecra," she would say, "and I was saved by a human who knelt when no one else dared." Back on the homeworld, Tyron worked with the new peace team. He received a message every week, a soft voice in his mind. Simple things. "I saw a red lake today. The stars here are beautiful. I miss your stories." One day, while walking through the city, Tyron saw a statue being built in the central square. It showed a young alien girl standing with her hand open, and beside her, a human man kneeling, not in fear, but in friendship. A plaque at the base read, "She was feared. He saw her." Together, they changed the galaxy. Tyron smiled and placed a flower at the base, not because she was gone, but because she was out there, spreading light. And he knew she would return when the stars called her home again.